So we're down here at the Chicago Architectural Center, and this center can be part of the architectural tours. And so the tours can work with the Chicago Architectural Center to get all kinds of architectural history to do the tours. Even the building tours throughout Chicago, the Chicago Architectural Center can work with them to give history about the builders and architects for the different buildings in Chicago. Even talking about the infrastructure. The streets were built on a grid system. So you have Washington and Monroe and Madison, and the presidents run east and west to and from the highways. So all the presidents run east and west. Michigan Avenue, State, LaSalle, Dearborn, all run Fort Dearborn, run north and south. So the presidents only run east and west. And then the other streets like Michigan Avenue, Lake Michigan, LaSalle Street, De La Salle, I guess. So was LaSalle Street named after De La Salle? And we didn't have to rename Lakeshore Drive DeSable Lakeshore Drive. That's DeSable. But is LaSalle Street somehow, who is LaSalle? So Dearborn is after Fort Dearborn. Michigan Avenue is after Lake Michigan. So I would assume LaSalle Street is named after somebody or something. So anyways, the city is built on a grid system, and the presidents run east and west, and the other streets run north and south. So if you're on a president, you know you're running east and west, either to or from the lake. But again, the Chicago Architectural Center can work with Shoreline and the different ones, and they can educate them, put them through, and work with the Architectural Center, who can give them the history and background and pull the information and so on to help create the architectural tours. And the city of Chicago says you have to work with and get a certificate through the Chicago Architectural Center, and the city gets a fee from them, and then you have to do continuing education. As the city gets new buildings and changes infrastructure, you have to do continuing education to keep up your certification to be able to continue to do the tours. And then there's a licensing fee that you have to pay every year, like I do with the CFP, to keep it enforced. And that creates revenue for the city, and it creates revenue for the architectural foundation and its history. Here's all the tour boats. And then you have all the flags that now are on Michigan Avenue over this bridge. And somebody took out the life preserver. But here's the Chicago Tribune. And then you got the Wrigley building right here. This is the Wrigley building. Talking about Wrigley candy, Wrigley gum. I mean, Chicago was a leader in candy. We had many different candy companies in Chicago. We were literally a world leader in candy. So now we have different popcorn, right? And then we have Nuts on Clark and many other. Truly, candy can integrate. You have chocolate-covered nuts, and you can do all forms of different types of candy. There is the Milky Way, but then the Mars bar has nuts, right? And then Mounds has nuts. I like the nuts in the Mounds bar, and it has coconut and so on. But again, they can integrate this. Like you can integrate popcorn into different, like, remember those caramel corn balls? Well, you can have a cheddar ball. It's just not only caramel corn balls. I used to like eating those caramel corn balls. And you can put the caramel corn on a stick. But you can also put a cheddar ball, popcorn, that you form into a cheddar ball. Then that's what they do with the caramel corn balls. And then you eat it on the stick. So again, they can do this and be creative with the popcorn offerings. And then obviously popcorn and ice cream, like you can put caramel corn and cheddar, or maybe, as long as it has the coating that keeps it from getting soggy, so it's crisp, and so it locks in the structure, you can do this. And so again, these are things that Chicago can do to make it unique, to tap into its thing, like the Magnificent Mile Light Fest. But we don't have anything for the Gold Coast, right? There's the Taste of Chicago we have for the food experience. And the Taste of Chicago can feature, every year can feature a different area of Chicago. One area of Chicago can be featured in the Taste of Chicago. This year we're featuring the Pilsen area and its diverse culinary cuisine. But they would have more booths from that area, and it would be set up. Or do you want to set up the Taste of Chicago? Yes, like Epcot, and you have restaurants from each area of Chicago, and it has to go through the mayor's office and approved, and those restaurants get featured at the Taste of Chicago from each of the wards in the city of Chicago. So you can make the whole city of Chicago included in the Taste of Chicago, but only select restaurants that get approved. And it rotates which restaurants are offered in the Taste of Chicago. So people come back every year, and it's a new experience. And it gives new opportunities to other restaurants to get featured in the Taste of Chicago. Since it's a Taste of Chicago, you can have every ward have different culinary that gets approved to be in the Taste of Chicago. And so it can feature the whole city, can be included. So this is a way to create inclusion and build out awareness of all the different wards within the city of Chicago through the Taste of Chicago. And then they can have tours that you can take of the different wards of the city of Chicago. Oh yeah, every ward can have its own tour. It might not be regular, it might be once a month or whatever, but you can take a tour of the different wards in the city of Chicago, and they can talk about them, the different wards, at the Taste of Chicago. And then you would have the tours and the realtors, and you think the realtors would be sponsoring the tours, right? Because you want people to get into the residential and commercial real estate. And so you think the real estate companies would be sponsoring the tours, and realtors would have a second job working the tours, right? Realtors working the tours. And so they can get a really in-depth knowledge of the area, and then they can teach their colleagues as they mentor them through the firm, and they can trade off on who does the tours through the firm. So each of them gets public speaking experience,